In this episode, we're breaking down finance, purchasing, and payroll. From the heart of paradise, I'm Matt.
And I'm Sarah. And of course, joining us in studio as always is our amazing team helping us produce the show.
Exciting show we have today. We're talking about kind of that backbone behind the district, a major piece, several departments that make things run.
Yeah. And Matt, I have to give you credit. You know, in our marketing and communications department, you oversee our budget. And I know it's quite the undertaking. I see you and Debbie in the office always working things out. But there's a lot that goes on behind it to make sure that we have our supplies, to make sure that we can purchase things for next year. There's really a lot.
And to be a transparent organization, one that's fiscally responsible, obviously you need a great team of people kind of overseeing the finance, the payroll, and purchasing. Things, obviously, that taxpayers and community members are going to find very important in their trust of our organization. So, of course, we don't do it alone. There's a great, huge team of people. They're experts in this area who are here to explain what they do in PVSchools. With us on the podcast today, Connor Hutchinson. You're the Director of Finance here in PVSchools. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Connor.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I'd be careful using the word expert. We're just very knowledgeable in our areas of expertise.
Very humble as well.
Yes, he is very humble.
So talk about what, for maybe those who don't understand what a finance department does in a public school district, talk to us a little bit about what you and your department do.
Yeah, so to give you the 10,000-foot view of what we do, obviously we oversee the budget for the district. What is that? Well, that is about a $250 million budget just from the state perspective, but then you're also adding on to that, you know, your grants and other smaller type projects, as well as your bond and capital expenditures. And from that, you're right, we do have a lot going on, such as you have your purchasing of supplies. You have not only salaries and benefits as well. And as I mentioned, there's construction and capital included with that. So anything you can imagine where money is exchanged and or received by the district, that is something that flows through my office.
I'm very impressed because I know you and I have talked before about some of the things that you do, and you really oversee a lot. Talk to the viewers specifically, though, about tax credit donations and Arizona tax credit.
Yeah, Arizona is a very unique state where you are allowed to make what they consider tax credit donations. Now, what is a tax credit donation? Well, let's be clear, that is a state level tax credit. It is also a non-refundable tax credit. And for you tax people, or maybe not tax people, this is that means that you don't get a refund. So if you don't owe anything and you make a tax credit donation, you do not get money back. Whereas a refundable tax credit, some of you might know, like those education ones that you get from universities, you can get a refund from those. So, but with Arizona and the unique states is you can carry that forward. Maybe a little more in tax than you might want to know, but it's very useful for those who are trying to plan out their tax bill and such. And really quick with that too, just to brush on that, you can make a $200 tax credit donation to a site that has eligible or that has students and eligible activities if you're single or married filing separate, or you can do up to $400 if you're married filing jointly.
And talk about how does that support schools? What's the benefit to students with tax credit?
Yeah, so it's a really nice way to pay for possibly an expense that you already were going to pay for, but getting that additional benefit of a possible tax deduction if you owe in the state of Arizona. That being said, we're talking extracurricular activities specifically, and there are qualifications like, is it an extracurricular activity? Is it a character education program, which is a uniquely defined term that they can ask the sites for more information on that? Is it for standardized testing fees for college readiness? Is it assessment for CTE prep programs? Or is it a, which is weird, maybe not for students, but is it a CPR training as defined? And that's kind of where those stem from. But aside from that, that's if you have a student. Those are tax credit eligible activities where that money can be donated to, such as like an extracurricular activity, after school type of trip. You also then can just make a general tax credit donation to the site or to a program, and they can purchase things that meet these terms. And that can also, if it's a general one to the site, then the principal has that discretion how they use that. And there's even a few more things you can purchase from that.
So it's a really great way for those with students or without students in our district to support the learning that's going on in the classroom, but kind of in a way that also benefits you, a win-win.
Absolutely. And, actually good anecdote is that I myself did that. Now, I don't have kids within the district, but knowing which schools or maybe which programs might need a little extra boost, or just a community you're tied to in one way or another, you can make a specific donation like you would any organization and direct it how to be spent.
Connor, for the parent who's watching, just briefly run through, if they want to make the donation, what do they need to do?
Yeah, on the district website, they can search for tax credit donation, and there is a payment page. And then there is information they will enter, such as choosing the school and entering the amount and the details of the donation. Then once they make that payment online, it'll go to the site and it'll be allocated accordingly. If it is for a student, like if you have a student in the district and it's for an applicable fee, like a class fee or participation fee, then it can be tax credit. It'll say on their non-tax credit, tax credit. And if they want to inquire if that can be paid as tax credit, they can reach out to their school staff to get that classified differently, which again, then they can claim on their state taxes.
Okay, so reach out to your child's school, or again, you can go to PVSchools.net and look for the tax credit option. Anything else before you go that you want to share with the viewer? Anything about finance? Anything that's just super fascinating that we need to know?
I think the biggest thing is just knowing that although, and this is for really the community, your support organizations, your staff, really anyone applicable, that we do our best to be as flexible as possible, but also operating within the guidelines of statute, board policy, and what they call Arizona USFR for schools, to make sure things are eligible to be paid with the certain funds that we have delegated to us, but also that we're following any applicable rules and regulations to for those activities or for those funds. So sometimes people think finance, we're just putting up a roadblock, or, well, finance stopped it. But really, we're doing that because we want to safeguard those assets which come from those taxpayers and should be, at the end of the day, related to a student in the district's community.
Well, what a sometimes challenging, I would imagine, position that you and your team have. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for what your team does. If you would like more information on district finances here in PV Schools, you can visit pvschools.net, where you'll see annual financial reports and other financial documents that are open for public viewing.
It was really interesting hearing Connor talk about that, because, again, I know there's a lot of detail behind it. And I know he said it at the very end, we really want to kind of like mitigate any risk. So we want to be very forthcoming, show taxpayers where their money's going and how we take care of it. And I love that we can support students in education by really having these opportunities like tax credit.
Yeah, that is
wonderful.
one thing that struck me in starting as an employee here is from behind the scenes, we get to see just how seriously we take being fiscally responsible and good stewards of taxpayer dollars. I, as a taxpayer, I definitely appreciate hearing that at the organizational level. And obviously that's alive and well here in PV.
Matt, to continue with this behind the scenes look of how things operate at the district level, and they really, the employees we're talking to, they make things happen for not just students and teachers and staff, but really to help out parents as well. And up next on the podcast, we have the Director of Purchasing, Eva Calles. Hi, Eva, welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
So you and your department oversee all of the purchasing that happens within the district. That's everything from curriculum and textbooks to resources and any kind of service the district uses. And I'm sure there's a million other things in the list of things that go into support student excellence. But take a deeper dive into your department. What does it actually mean to be part of a purchasing department? What does the purchasing department do for the district?
Whoa, that is a loaded question. It is my pleasure to lead our department, procurement, which is in charge of all matters that have to do with compliance. So like you mentioned, every single purchase from pencils all the way to we just procured, the CMAR, through a CMAR, the rebuild of a school. Major projects like that, everything has to be done in a way that is compliant with our policies, with state, federal regulations. And our department is very diligent about doing this work, really, putting a lot of effort into contracting with great vendors, doing all our due diligence when it comes to using contracts that are already available, or, processing our very own contracts.
Explain the process of if we want to, let's say, again, vendors for rebuilding a school or for purchasing pencils. On your end, you have to have so many bids that come in to make sure that it's kind of a fair pick. How do you do that to make sure that we're being fair and equitable with all of our vendors and making sure that we're being responsible with taxpayer dollars?
I think the main thing is to remember that for every type of procurement, there's going to be some level of review, evaluation that goes into obviously following the rules that apply to that particular procurement. In some cases, we need a very knowledgeable evaluation committee that will help us once all these proposals come in. Sometimes we're reviewing, just a handful. Other times we get 40, 50 proposals. So it is a major task that goes on in the background. Looking at all these, the solicitation has to, will have a list of requirements. The vendor then puts in their proposal. We will look at it, or whoever's involved in the evaluation, and make sure that at the end of the day, we are awarding vendors that actually meet our requirements and that they are, doing what's best for our district.
Yeah, I like that. I think it really is what's best for the district, for taxpayers. And again, you really are mitigating the risk that can come with dealing with purchasing and money. So thank you for that. Talk a little bit more too about, again, some of the things we can get. We get technology. There's I don't even know the right terminology. I apologize. But if we need something like new software, a new app in the marketing and communications department, we go through you.
It is really a collaborative effort. I can't take all the credit, obviously. We have experts at every department. In this case, information technologies, we have a director, we have a team there that will help us not only develop the specs, figure out what it is the district actually needs. And our job is to put it out there and make sure that the right vendors are, available for it. And that process can be sometimes pretty simple. Sometimes it can be a little more complicated. But again, it is truly a team effort.
And PVSchools is kind of a leader in some respects. You'd mentioned our own contracts. There's a thing called cooperative contracts that we participate in or lead in some areas. Talk to us about what a cooperative contract is and how it potentially benefits the district.
The best way to put it, cooperative contracts, just means that other entities can use it. We use the term piggyback. We piggyback on other cooperative contracts, and for those cooperative contracts and for which we are the lead entity through 1GPA, other entities can use our contract. And so it is it's a privilege, and it's also a huge responsibility that we have as a district. My department, obviously, we are very happy to be able to provide that for other districts and other entities out there. And
when other districts are looking up to us and the contracts that we put out, we definitely want to make sure that we're doing the best job possible, not just because we would want to do that for us anyway, but we're helping other districts as well.
Absolutely. And PV, being a pretty big district here in Arizona, a lot of people are looking up to us and using our resources.
I have to say, I give you so much credit. You have to have such an eye for detail because there's so much that goes into this process. Thank you for everything you and your team do. I know we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Purchasing is such a big part of what we do because, just think about curriculum, all the things that go into providing students with top-notch curriculum that's part of a purchasing process. So,
yeah.
It kind of touches every level, every aspect of the journey of excellence.
It really does. And finally on the podcast today is going to be Joscelyn Perry Smith, who is a payroll coordinator. And I have to say, I'm sorry, but this is going to be one of my favorite discussions because it means I get paid. And so let's talk to Joscelyn. It's her first time on the podcast and get all the details behind her department. Hi.
Welcome. So payroll obviously is an exciting department for staff because you manage the paychecks. It can't be as simple as that, right? There's a lot that goes into it. Talk about what you and your department do.
Okay. We say we are honorary members of every single department and school because we touch everyone's money. And so we do what's considered start to finish. From the time you're hired to the time you leave or retire, we interact with you. And it's could be from setting up your deductions for taxes, for medical benefits, to, unfortunately, a garnishment if you have one, or just how you decide you want your pay. Do you want actual pay? Do you want balance of contract? So our department talks to everyone who wants to get some information to tell us how to serve you best. And we do it in the background, get your hours, get your pay, and get you paid accurately and on time.
And part of providing this journey of excellence and a top-notch education for students comes down to having the right people in place and being competitive in pay. Talk about how your department works with new employees. How do you support them? Because there's a lot to set up when you get into a new organization.
Again, so we ask them to come in if they want to. Again, a lot of these things are online through employee access. But if somebody wants to come in and says, okay, what's the difference between actual pay and balance of contract? You know, what does that look like for me personally? And so we want you to come in and ask myself or the payroll techs that's assigned to you to give you an outlook on what's your best bet. Like someone for Sarah may be different than you, Matt. Like you may have 5 kids, not saying that you do, but and Sarah has none. So what her paycheck and what she wants to bring home is completely different. So again, that's why we like that person to come in one-on-one so we could have that independent, specific conversation with them that's best for them.
And that is one thing that I've noticed here in PV. I've heard it said a couple times, and it's no different in payroll. Relationships and maintaining good working relationships and being here to support others is definitely alive and well.
Well, I know even what you just touched on is my husband and I decided we want to save a little bit of money from each of my paychecks. So when we purchase our next car, we have cash to do that. So I've been taking out from each paycheck a little bit of money and putting it in a separate account. And it was very easy going into you guys. I think you gave me a form. I filled it out super quick. And it's nice that money is taken out. I don't ever see it. And it's just put in a separate account for me. And we're slowly building up that savings, which is just, again, it's nice that employees have that option.
So a lot of viewers or listeners may be familiar with the payroll department, but there are some specific things that happen in a school district that make it a little bit more complicated. Not all of our employees work 12 months. There's a couple different groups of employees. Talk about the complexity of like the pay calendar and the different kinds of employees and how that kind of impacts you and your department.
So we are 12 months because we have people who work 12 months. And the difference are they ESPs? Are they certified? Are they administrators? And all of those are, you're right, different pay groups. And so we have to designate work calendars specifically for those particular groups. And for every group, there are 2 sets of pay calendars because, again, I gave you the option. Do you want actual pay? Do you want balance of contract? And everyone gets those options. So there's some extensive things in the background that we do in payroll that looks kind of seamless on the other side for the employee, that all I need to do is choose this, and that's how my pay goes.
When you guys also oversee, if one of the benefits of working here is we get great PTO and we get sick time and all of that, you oversee that as well as in regard to our pay. So if I need to take sick time or if I need to take a personal day, how I get paid is also different, and you have to kind of manage that as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But that does start with the employee. All leave time is available in employee access and for ESPs through Time Clock Plus. So you know how much leave time you have. So if you put in sick time and you don't have any, that's kind of going to be on you that you're not going to get paid for that day because you didn't have any available. Now, you might have had personal time available, but you didn't put that, and the system is not going to know, just automatically switch it over. So that
And the good news is, if anyone has any questions, you guys are always willing to help people through those challenges.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you and your department does to help keep the district fiscally responsible and keep the right people in the right places so we can positively impact student excellence. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Joscelyn.
For more information about the departments we talked about today on the podcast, you can visit PVSchools.net. You can also find out more about the many journeys of excellence. And with that, Sarah, that has been today's podcast. For more information about the many journeys of excellence, visit pvschools.net.
You can also find PV Schools on social media by searching at PV Schools, and make sure to support student success by liking, commenting, and sharing.
And as always, support the pod by rating us on Apple and Spotify and sharing new episodes of the social media platform of your choice.
Bye.
Bye.